I remember, going to shows as a kid, like going to see Cirque du Soleil shows with my parents and looking at these people on the stage just thinking, that is what I want to do. Like, I can't imagine anything else in my life apart from this. I love the diversity of the team that you get to work with. I love that I have friends all over the world, and everyone that I've met in circus has just been these crazy, colorful characters. I like that when I'm on stage, I am just a different person. I have no inhibitions. I'm just like, I'm not myself, or I'm a version of myself that I would never be in real life.
Welcome to the TheatreArtLife podcast, and hello. We're putting the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the globe, the culture creators and the backstage masters. My name is Anna Robb.
And my name is Anna Aguilera, and on this episode we'll be talking to Jessica Ward about acrobatics.
Jessica is an Australian acrobat based out of Dubai. She has extensive experience in different acrobatic disciplines such as hand balancing, cerceau, and aerial silks. She was the lead acrobat at La Pearl. Welcome, Jessica, to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to see you in Dubai. We're spread across the globe just for this conversation. So we want to start by asking, just simply for our audiences, for those who don't work in this genre of entertainment, tell us what is an acrobat and what do you do?
So basically, in my role, I get hired by companies, events, shows, or venues to perform any kind of range of different acts. And this can be something from like doing, say, a one-off gig for an event, all the way up to doing like an open-ended show contract where I could be doing 10 plus shows a week for several years at a time. I would consider myself to be a generalist, which means that I have kind of skills across many different apparatus. This was kind of a semi-conscious choice when I first started out, because I realized quite quickly that I had a set of skills that I started with, and people would ring me and say, hey, can you do aerial silks? And I was saying no for so long that it got to a point where I realized I should learn that, and then I can say yes, and then I'm going to be more employable. So I have done like feature and specialty acts in shows in the past, but I don't think that I would really say I've invested or focused on one specific thing enough to say that that's my sole thing. So yeah, I am what we would call a generalist.
And you're from Australia, so how did you get into acrobatics in Australia, and how did you get into the industry? Obviously, you've got quite a credible list of shows under your belt, and like you said, under different roles and different positions with different companies. So how did you start out?
So I grew up in Sydney, where at the time my mom grew up in Perth. So in Western Australia, they have a syllabus where, like how you would learn a ballet syllabus, they had an acrobatic syllabus that I believe still exists. So this is like kind of, if you see an old school contortion kind of film of how they do like bent back handstands and everything's on hard ground, there's no apparatus, there's no mats. That's kind of essentially what she learned through her dance school. So we eventually ended up in Sydney, and my mom realized that this didn't exist there. So I was learning ballet. I'd started ballet when I was 3 years old, and she offered the school like, hey, if you guys want acrobatics classes, then I'm really happy to teach. So that was kind of my introduction into more like stage type work. And then from that, she discovered acrobatic gymnastics. So this is like a discipline of gymnastics, which we moved into for a number of years. Like that took up, I would say, most of my younger years competing and training in that. Going from sort of dance into more competitive brought more technique, more sort of gymnastic technique to what I was doing. And then circus kind of came later on, which was like a whole different beast. That was just something else that I couldn't have anticipated how different that was going to be from what I was doing, which was quite shocking to me at the time.
So did you imagine when you were this little girl and going to the gymnastics competitions that you'll end up at Luxor in Las Vegas or in Dubai?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I remember, going to shows as a kid, like going to see Cirque du Soleil shows with my parents and looking at these people on the stage just thinking, that is what I want to do. Like, I can't imagine anything else in my life apart from this. But from that point, I stopped competing. When I finished school, and I stopped all kind of acrobatic work at about the age of 17, 18. And I was an air hostess for a short time. And during that time, I had applied to the National Circus School in Melbourne, in Australia, called NICA. And that was kind of my introduction to where I am now. But absolutely no, like, I could not have anticipated how insane this was going to get from watching my first show to being in this process now. It's been just more than I could have dreamt. So I'm extremely grateful.
So you went to NICA and then you started auditioning for shows or roles? Like, what was your first sort of paid gigs?
So once I graduated from NICA, I was I guess I was at a lucky point in time. Like, there was this bursting gig scene going on in Melbourne, and my family was still in Sydney at the time. My dad was a Qantas pilot, so it was super easy for me to jump between states and just take any gigs that I could get. So I was doing some kind of like side work, like working in cafes and retail, just trying to like keep my head above water when the season was off for gigs. But during that time, like, it was a kind of a weird realization that I had after finishing NICA, that I kind of felt like I had it all going on, like I had a degree, I'd had a bunch of training behind me, and I was ready to go and ready for anyone to hire me. But it didn't happen as quickly as what I wanted it to and what I expected it to. So the gig scene was great for a bit. And then when that started to dry up, I had applied for more shows and gigs than I could count, and gotten so many rejections and so many just like knockbacks where I was thinking, this is never going to happen for me. So I had kind of a bit of a lucky break, in a way, that a friend of mine, Lee Manning, who's an incredible performer in Melbourne, she called me one day and said, there's a gig going in Abu Dhabi at Ferrari World, and it's for silks. I can't take it, but if you want the email, I'm going to give it to you and you can apply. So I did, and that was kind of, the start of how the ball started rolling a little bit for me. But it was a very, very slow start, and there were many points along the way where I just thought, I think that's probably the end of my performing career now. And then boom, out of the blue, like, something else would come up and everything would get rolling again. So it's been unpredictable. I'll say that much.
It is such a volatile part of the industry that we work in, because we're all gig people, but your particular ability to take a job is not only your capability of doing it, but are you the right look? Are you the right look? Are you the right height? Are you right for the show? Are you in good fitness and health? And there's so many other factors that weigh into your eligibility for that role, right? And then you're by nature generally a creative person, so you might get on a good show, but then you're going to be on it some people are happy to sit on the same show for 10 years and other people are not. Do you see yourself as a person that likes to do, even if I know you've done some shows that are maybe toured or Le Pearl exactly, but do you find yourself somebody that wouldn't stay 10 years in one particular show, that you want more variety?
If you had have asked me this probably 5-7 years ago, I would have said, no, I want to just like go for 6 months and do temp contracts and jump around the place, and I want to experience it all. But now, like, I think I've realized that I'm 32 now, so that is at a point where, like, I've done the gigs, I've done the jumping around between different jobs and the instability of that. So suddenly that's feeling less attractive to me. So I think I like the option of being involved in something where I know I'm getting paid every month, even if it's a year contract, and then at the end of that year, I can re-sign, I can move on. But the instability is starting to bother me a little bit, and I think now, like, officially being between jobs again, it's kind of refreshed that feeling of just like, okay, like, I've got to get my hustle in again and get this happening. And I think the other part of it too is, like, I'm 5'6", which is not particularly tall in the real world, but in acrobatic world, that is like a giraffe. Like, I am so much taller than most of the girls that I work with. So that can be a real setback for me when they're looking for like tiny little girls to throw around at maybe like 5 foot nothing. And it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how nicely you can point your feet or how neatly you can do a trick. if you are above 5'1", you're not going to get the gig. So I think for me now, like if I can find something that I do enjoy, like I love being creative. I love having some flexibility in how much I can contribute to what I'm doing. But it comes to a point where it's like, okay, I think I would rather the security of holding on to something great than to let that go and be bouncing between things that I feel like I'm an awkward fit. I've done well for myself, but I'm somewhat of an awkward fit in many ways.
Your last role, you were the lead acrobat, and you were in charge of training people and developing acts or modifying acts as needed. Do you see yourself going more towards that, like coaching direction, maybe, or an artistic direction, or just moving on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I would be really interested in kind of an act development type role if I could ever find one in the future. I was extremely lucky to have the opportunity to create an act for Lapel that was an idea that I had, that I pitched, that we got to do it, and I got to perform it for Franco Dragone, and he approved it, and it was just this kind of moment of like, this is insane, like this, I can't believe this is happening. So I was able to perform the act in the show, but on top of that, able to train two of the other girls to back up the number as well. So I've loved teaching people who want to learn, and people who have not even necessarily a base of skills. Like I love teaching professionals, but people who want to learn, like that's the big kicker for me. So yeah, I think through that experience, it has drummed home a little bit that if there was a position like that I could develop work, acts, and different apparatus with people on a professional level, I think that would be incredibly interesting for me to experience or consider for the future.
So you're wrapping up your Middle East experience right now. How do you feel? Like you started in Abu Dhabi and right now you're at a point in Dubai where you might be shifting a career, might be not sure what's going to happen, but you're leaving Dubai. So how does that feel?
It feels like very uncharted waters at the moment, which is a little bit terrifying because there's been a lot of changes that have gone on here, and I feel like it's the right move for me to move on. So I'm confident in my decision. But yeah, it does bring back all of those feelings of like, oh God, like where am I going to go? Where am I going to work? I got to get in shape and start training. And what am I going to do? And yeah, it's a bit scary, but it feels right at the same time. And it's funny because like when I left Abu Dhabi all those years ago, this was like 2012, I think, that I worked there. I left thinking, wow, that would be really cool to go back in like 5 years' time and see how the city's developed and what has changed. And I was back here like a little more than 5 years later, but it was just this weird thing of like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like you just never know where the road is going to take you. So there's a seed of excitement within me that I'm quietly optimistic on what the future might hold post-COVID once we all bash through that thing.
Once we bash through that. It's that is really uncharted territory. So it's a double header for you right now.
Yeah.
So you've also done some modeling and television and video and corporate events besides sort of the circus shows. And so how do they relate, and how are they different from each other than, working with Lapel, from Lapel to corporate shows to video stuff? How does that feel as a performer?
It's got its absolute similarities and differences. I think the thing that I'm challenged by in a way that I don't particularly like, but I do think is good for me with doing one-off gigs and live TV, I feel like you have to get it right the first time. You don't have another shot at doing this thing. So there's this, I think, a need to be cool and collected and feel relaxed going into this stuff. And of course, Murphy's Law, it's never the way it goes. Like your heart's thumping in your chest and you're nervous, and because you're nervous, it doesn't go the way you want it to go. It's made me appreciate when I have had the opportunity to do longer term contracts and shows that, yes, you have one shot at that particular show, but Lapel is a perfect example. I had 700 other opportunities to get it right. So I enjoy the process of the act development. So to be able to experience that is a really nice side. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I think that's something that I struggle with if things don't go well, and if it is like a live TV thing or a one-off gig where I just leave thinking, oh no, like that was terrible. Like that's really hard for me to take. But yeah, regardless of all of it, like I think the approach to the work is always the same. Like you need to be positive, you need to be personable and kind, and really try and build a relationship with the people and the team that you're working with. I think that's like hands down the number one importance of all of this, that through doing that you're building your network whether you realize it or not, and you never know where people end up later down the road. So I've certainly experienced people calling me 5 years later saying, hey Jess, we worked together on this thing and I'd love to get you involved, and that's amazing. So I think, yeah, regardless of the work, it's just the approach to it that sort of is that bottom continuous line through all of it.
So you said you considered yourself a generalist. Is there, though, a discipline you like more, or you hold closer to your heart?
I think in my old acrobat age of 32, I'm enjoying more aerial stuff where I think we're in a place of supply and demand right now. Like there's a lot of people out there doing aerial work, and I think it's pushed people and myself especially like into an area of wanting to find ways that both feel good for me and my body to do that is different to what other people are doing. So if I had to pick something, I'm going to pick two things. I'm going to be greedy and say maybe so and silks as my top two. If you had have asked me a few years back, I probably would have said hand balancing, just because when I was gigging in Melbourne, there weren't many venues that did aerial. So I would have people ring me and say, hey, we want an act. It has to be 5 minutes long. And it always had to be hand balancing because there weren't any venues. My body doesn't like that so much anymore. Like, and my brain doesn't either, to be honest. Like if you lock me in a room with a set of canes, I could train all day. I would train until my arms fell off. But as soon as I need to perform it, I am like instantly nervous. I did hand balancing with Cirque du Soleil, and I was like, I can't explain the pressure that I would put on myself to get it right. I would liken it to something like tight wire or juggling, that if you get it wrong, everyone knows you get it wrong. Whereas if I'm on silks or hoop, I can enjoy it. I can maybe like do something a little bit wrong, but I would say majority of the people in the room probably wouldn't know that something hadn't gone to plan. Yeah, I think I want to really enjoy the remainder of my time on stage. So if I can do more aerial stuff, then I would pick aerial stuff over anything else at this point.
Out of interest, though, in terms of margin of error in a hand balancing act, like, what percentage of it doing it wrong would you, when you went into a show, is it a 5% chance, or are you doing stuff that was so risky that it was a 15-20% chance? And is that why you were nervous? Or, because in my mind, you would the people have it so in their body that they just get up there and nail it every time. So it's surprising to me that you say I felt nervous every time I did that. So yeah, what was your level of risk in that for you?
I don't even know. I think it's just a mental game more than anything, to be honest. Like I know, like 10 times out of 10, if I did a handstand, I would hold the handstand. But as soon as I have that mental pressure, and I think that it was really like up the ante when I was like, oh my God, you are backing up a hand balancing act in Cirque du Soleil. You cannot get this wrong. And the pressure was only coming from myself. I had every ounce of support from my coach and the artistic director and everybody else in the team. So yeah, it was just like having the balls to like get up there and be like, no, you've done this and you can do it, and just pushing past that element of fear. The act that I did in Cirque was like nothing that I had ever done or could compare to anything else. That it was like kind of looked like a dinosaur skeleton that was essentially a seesaw. So you had two people on either side of you that were balancing and had to kind of correct your movements for you. So it was absolutely a team effort, and it was completely different to doing an act on canes where like that is completely your responsibility. I watch other hand balancers that I don't really consider myself a hand balancer, but I watch professional hand balancers out there and just think, oh my God, like that's like the dream, I would love to have that just relaxed state of like, I'm cool, I'm in control. But I don't know, maybe it was just the frequency in how much I did it. I don't know, but I've never conquered that fear.
That's when I think you consider that then a specialist act for, those people that nail it every time, right? And because you're a generalist, you're like, it's the side hustle, right?
I dabble.
The dabbling in the hand balance. Just as, I dabble in hand balancing too in my time. Not. We all do dabbling things like that. No. What would you say you like most about your job?
I love the diversity of the team that you get to work with. I love that I have friends all over the world, and everyone that I've met in circus has just been these crazy, colorful characters that I think you learn so much from, because they've grown up in a setting completely different to yours. They work in a different way to you. They communicate in a different way to you. And that really opens your eyes to many, many different things that go so far beyond just work. I, believe it or not, as a child, was painfully shy, like such an introvert, just hated any social situation. I still have like points in my life now where that haunts me, but I like that when I'm on stage, I am just a different person. I have no inhibitions. I'm just like, I'm not myself, or I'm a version of myself that I would never be in real life. So I think to escape reality and to have that opportunity to do that is pretty cool. So yeah, there's many, many things that I love about this job. It's totally bonkers, and you just got to learn to go with the flow and be ready for anything at any moment, because you make a plan and something will throw it off course. But it's a pretty exciting industry to be in.
And if you could change anything, what would you change?
I'm not going to go too far into some of this because I do want to work again. A big want of mine is that people who are artists and performers, and maybe this goes into other areas that I'm not so in tune with, but if there could be some kind of an education on the worth of what we do. And I think as a performer, like, your years on stage are very brief. The last 10 years, I feel like I've blinked and I'm here and I don't know what happened to that time. So I think, I'm not specifically talking about this time during the pandemic, because I think there's going to be a lot of economic fallout that happens and affects all of us, and rates and all of that kind of thing. But that aside, I think people need to consider the fact that, like, my situation, for example, I've been involved in this. I've been training for this since I was 3 years old. If I think of the time that's gone into that, the money that my parents paid for my costumes, my hair, my makeup, my tutoring, like everything that I've gone through, that doesn't make it okay for someone to offer me $100 to do a gig, or not offer me even minimum wage in the United States to work doing 10 shows a week. That is not acceptable to me. So people who do this, and who do this in the capacity of shows, big corporate shows, you need a lot of training and a lot of preparation to be able to be even eligible to get a look in to working for these people. So I think there needs to be some kind of, I don't know how to say it other than just education for, I don't know if it's people and what they're willing to accept, or corporations are willing to offer, but it really can devalue the entire industry and the work that we do. If I say to someone, I am charging this for a gig, and someone who is maybe not aware of the situation or the rates, or not as experienced, comes in and offers a third of what I'm asking for, it damages the entire industry, and it damages what everyone before us has worked so hard to achieve. So yeah, I think that's a really big issue that I don't know a way to resolve that, but I do think it's an issue that maybe I just feel like it's a bit more highlighted right now with the pandemic going on, and with changes and offers that I am expecting in the future that will come out of this. And I guess the other thing that I would say is, I wish that there could be some kind of a restructure of the management of corporate. I say corporate companies, but it could have to do with other companies as well. That I think it's such an integral part to have people with artistic influence within management teams. So whether that's, directors or company managers, I think we need, as artists, someone to have our backs and to really fight for us and say what's reasonable, what's not. And I think some of this, in any environment, it's not all about what you know. It's often who you know. And I've seen on multiple occasions that the fairness of the hiring into positions, and certainly management positions, are not always taken in the best interest of the people who are going to be affected by it. The artistic director that we had at LaPo, actually, for the final, he's left recently, but for the final half of the time I was working here, is this brilliant man that he was an artist himself. And I think the best people in management positions that I have worked with have been artists themselves in some capacity. And the closer that they have been to being, say, a circus artist or a performer on stage, the better they will represent you. So I just think that that's such an important part of being treated well and being treated fairly, and the expectation of the work. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit passionate about this topic at the moment.
No, it's a very good, I mean, it's such a wonderful reflection, especially at this time. And I think that, sort of sparked something in me in terms of, I feel like that ability to manage, or an artistic person being able to be in the management realm, what I feel is, and even the payment and all things that you've just brought up, it's something that, it compounds for me into one thing. Why, when you're doing training in circus arts or training in these sort of things, do you not have modules of business management, and accounting and a management side of artistic? Because you going into the industry, it is a business, right? And so, and a lot of performers and artists don't know how to manage either themselves or work their way into management positions, and they do it by default and they learn on the job, and all of that's fine. But you're going to start off in such a better position and defend the industry if people going into the industry know how to set the bar and also manage well. So do you think that, having an earlier education on that would compound, would help the issue?
Absolutely. I think that's, the root of a lot of it. And that's, my first point, saying educating people on what you're worth and what to ask for, what to look for in a contract, what is a reasonable fee for you to do 10 shows a week or however many shows a week. That's like, absolutely. Things like international tax, like all these things come into it that you don't face until you're in it and you're actually dealing with it. I think another part of it too is having people hired into positions where, dare I say, they're not qualified to be there. Maybe they have worked in entertainment in some corner of entertainment before, but somehow, maybe it is by a case of it's not what you know, have ended up jumping from one corner, skipping all of the interim work, and then they end up in management roles and end up in directors' roles. It's all detrimental. It's really difficult to have people calling the shots and telling you their expectations when you don't see that they fully know your side of it and don't see your side of it. So yeah, I think it's education, but I think it's also really hiring from a broader spectrum and seeing a full approach of like, who are we looking at here, and who is the most qualified for the job, and not who is your friend and who can you sneak in the side door.
And who has the tools to defend the creative process? Because once you get into management positions, that's really ultimately what those people need to do. They need to defend the progress and the process of creativity to those people who are the money people, the corporates, the people that are doing. And that's always such a difficult role. And if you don't have the tools and resources and knowledge and expertise in how to do that, you can be the best artist in the world and the best director. But the real task is being able to explain and defend that process to the people above you. Otherwise, you will not get the time to create something magical.
Absolutely. And case in point, I think looking at what has happened with Cirque du Soleil in recent months, like you had Guy Laliberté at the front of that, charging forward, and he was such a great businessman, but also had this great artistic vision of where things needed to go, and he kept a lid on how much they're expanding. As soon as you put that in the hands of business people, where I know that business people are an extremely integral part of our reality in corporate circus, but in any corporate environment for that matter. But I think when you lose that person with the artistic vision, you end up, you've got a Cirque du Soleil experience going on. Like they try and grow so fast, and they're only looking at the bottom line, and it becomes all about the money and not about the product that they're selling, when the product that they're selling was the reason for their success in the first place. So yeah, I hope that all of this is going to maybe maybe level everything a little bit, or bring some more attention to what is the grounds of what we're really passionate about. Why are we doing this, and what do people want?
And they're going to need to be bringing shows back that are going to make money, this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, I see some jazz productions going on.
I will see.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been great to have you.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome to chat to you guys.
Yeah, lovely to hear your insights. It's great to talk to you and meet you for the first time.
Yeah, thank you.
Please write a review on our podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, and let your friends know about us. You can learn more about TheatreArtLife by visiting our website at www.theatreartlife.com. And you can also follow us on social media and leave your questions and comments on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, or YouTube. We want to thank David Sire for composing the music for our podcast, and Michelle Shirata, who is our sound engineer. We are your hosts, Anna and Anna, and this is the Theatre Art Life podcast, where we put the spotlight on those who create live entertainment around the world.